All right, we should be live. Welcome to the Smeth
Hello.
Den. This is Ollie.
Hey, it's me, Oliver.
I'm just gonna type here really quick.
Okay.
Okay, so you saw me on Mr. Girl Hotline talking about art, and that made you really inspired to make art. And you hate artists.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually I wrote like a bunch down. I was at work when I found the videos and I don't know, it's slow months, so I just started writing at work and I have like a bias against artists, I guess, in general, because most of the ones I've met are really bad artists and they
Yeah.
have like really terrible personalities, I guess. But there's the more I wrote, the more I realized it was more like the anger wasn't really coming from like a place of like I hate artists. It was more like I was jealous of them. Um, because I got the I've always gotten the feeling that artists can get away with being way more expressive emotionally than anybody else. And I've always wanted to be able to do that. But I guess like it would just in my past experiences, I've always gotten the sense that for me, I was never allowed to do that. And
Hmm.
I was not like enough of an artist or I wasn't good enough of an artist or whatever. So when I saw you like just doing some like crazy shit in the dog cage with Mr. Girl or whatever, I was kind of like jealous of you that you were able to like do something cool like that and just like not give a shit.
Yeah.
But since then, like, with some of the other stuff I was dealing with at the time, I it just like it was kind of like the final puzzle piece I needed to like put some stuff together in my mind, and I was able to like come to some good conclusions and learn to express myself in like a healthy way, I guess.
Cool. Cool.
Hmm.
So, do you still hate artists?
Some of them, but not you, and not a lot of
I
artists.
I
So,
hate I hate artists too. I mean, yeah, I mean, going doing art school, I hate like oh my god. There was so much of this stupid like there's just so many stupid tropes that artists can do just to like do the bare minimum, especially in art school. And like, well, man,
mm.
there's like a certain type of artist that I really hate. This like feminist type, and like they just do something weird regarding their vagina. Um,
Oh my
like
God, yes,
yes,
I
yes,
hate them.
yes. Okay, you know what I'm talking. Yes, like oh, like I put like I like knitted a scarf, except I fed it through under my legs so that like my vagina touched every part of the like the wool, and
Oh no.
it's like come on, like I
Oh
mean
God, and
this
you
is
know they
something.
like
It's something
go
like you
ahead,
would
sorry.
get like an only if you were an OnlyFans creator, like that would sell for a lot. You know, like that would like that seems like the utility of like.
Well, that's the job that they all, take on afterwards. So, I'm
Oh
sorry.
yeah. Well, yeah,
But
that's why I'm so jealous of women, because
true.
I find that women are better at getting the certain part of what it takes to be an artist is like the geisha part, but that's also a burden that women have. And
Yeah.
we wanted to talk about gender and transitioning stories. Um,
Yes.
so, do you believe you have an internal experience of gender?
Um, I think I would say so for sure. I think a lot of people, maybe more for cis people or whatever, just like people who don't really think about it. Um, I think a lot of people don't know what it's like to not have an internal experience of gender, which, when you're repressing gender dysphoria and you're not quite sure what was going on, which was like the case for me as a kid. You don't grow up having like a false sense of gender. You just don't grow up with it at all. So I would say now I definitely have an internal experience with gender, but growing up I didn't have that. And it
Hmm.
like the way I was explaining it to my sister earlier today is like it's almost kind of like seeing the world but without all the colors. So it's like you're seeing it with four colors instead of all of them. You just grow up not like not thinking about certain things. And now that I do have a more internal experience with that, I definitely feel like just more complete as a person.
Interesting, interesting.
Hmm.
I hear so many different opinions or perceptions on this type of thing. I personally I believe there's a lot of reasons you can be trans. There are a lot of places it
Hmm.
can come from. Um, so when
Yeah.
one person talks about like an internal sense of gender, that means something different than it means to another person. Like
Mm.
I was just talking to someone like a couple hours ago, and they were saying a very different thing from you. They were saying that most people have no internal sense of gender, but they think that trans people are people that do have one. So, but you're saying you
It's
don't.
interesting.
Yeah, well, that's different from what you said, which is interesting.
I think I wonder if it might have something to do with what we recognize as an internal sense of gender. So for the person you were talking to, it might be that like for them when they're thinking about what does that mean to have an internal sense of gender, it might mean that like just recognizing your gender and thinking about it and kind of pondering on it, which would make sense for a lot of like cis people because they don't really need to think about it. It's kind of like, you know, they more or less fit into the gender they're assigned and the, you know, sex they're assigned and everything. Whereas for trans people, because you do have to think about it, you're just more cognizant of it.
Hmm.
But I feel like if you can confidently say like I'm a man or I'm a woman, like you must have at least some sort of internal sense of something in order to be able to say that confidently.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's the way I see it at least.
Yeah.
Um, but I don't know, like for me, I guess well maybe like depending on again how you say it. I grew up like thinking like what am I? That was like a big question on my mind. Like what am I and who am I? And there's a lot of different places that question can come from. It doesn't always have to be gender dysphoria. Uh I every now and then like I get like memories from when I was a teenager or whatever, and I do remember like googling how to bind your chest or like how to make your boobs look flatter, that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Um which you know looking back now was like a normal thing to research. So I can kind of like in hindsight now recognize the symptoms of gender dysphoria or whatever, but at the time it was just like it was almost an intuitive thing for me to do. Like I didn't know why I wanted to like bind my boobs backward, like back into my chest or whatever, but it was just like it's just what I did instinctively, even though I had no idea what being trans or I didn't even realize you could identify as a man. That I did. It never even crossed my mind as something possible. But it was still um it was still on my mind. It actually made me laugh when I think you were talking to Will um and you were mentioning how you didn't want to do the hokey pokey as a kid
Oh yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
you
yeah,
like
yeah.
machine guns.
Yeah,
That shit made me laugh so
I
hard.
said that. I said that specifically to my kindergarten teacher. I was a real troublemaker. I also would kiss boys and girls. I would just kiss people, and I would kiss people, and I'd do something called uji. Uji is when you put your cheeks together and go, ooh, you rub your cheeks together. And I was like, oh, but don't you want to do a kiss? Oh, how about just a uji? And I would just do that, and yeah, I was yeah, I was a
That's so cute.
real cuddly little ball of love, and they didn't love that at all. Um,
Well, yeah, I guess I could see how that would cause trouble, but I thought it was funny that you had this like performative masculinity aspect over the hokey pokey because like
yeah,
I'm starting to feel that like every guy has that. There's like one thing that's like weirdly normal for everyone else, but to them it's like super girly. For me, it was using hair conditioner in my hair. Like, and I didn't know how to say like I'm a boy, but I would say I'm a tomboy, and I'm not gonna put conditioner in my hair because for whatever reason I thought that was a girly thing to do.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when you mentioned the hokey pokey, it made me laugh because it reminded me of myself as a kid. But yeah.
I remember having going through puberty and having gender dysphoria going through puberty. Like
Hmm.
I remember you said you would research like binding your chest and stuff. The stuff I would research is I would Google like how can I like get rid of my sex drive because I hated the
Hmm.
fact that like suddenly I had a sex drive and I was like horny all the time and I was like it was just obvious to me that this is gonna ruin my life. This is
Hmm.
horrible. Like but it's just I've I've learned to live with it. That's for sure. But um, I think a lot of my pathology and shit comes from stuff around that. Um,
Like more sexual repression type of thing.
no, I've my sexual repression is completely liberated. I have no, by that I like I'm into like denial, which
Mm.
is it definitely comes from like trying to like look at how to like repress my sex drive and stuff. But like I was like, rather than let that actually repress my sex drive, it was like, no, this is my sex drive. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the
yeah.
repression is the fun part, you know? So
I kind of understand that. Yeah, I'm a bit similar. I think more lately, just because like testosterone does that to you. And
yeah,
so I think partly listening to some of the stuff you said, but also just like in general, I was like, okay, like I can jerk off like every night, but what if I didn't and just see what happens? So
yeah,
I like you just mess around with it. And you're just like, what if just see where it goes.
yeah. The
Um,
longer you
I
go, the
yeah.
longer you go, like the more creative your fantasies get, and then the more like you feel like you've lost something once they're gone. But like then there's like you don't want to be like deranged, so you need to have like rules. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
yeah.
I was like kind of doing that with myself like my I think it was like on Thursday. It was like the last day off I had or something. Where I was like I don't know, for me I'm very much about like discipline and that kind of thing. I have my own theories as to like where that comes from or whatever, but like I'm just more of a I like to be like when you were talking about rules, I like to be given rules that I have to follow. Um and I like a very creative repercussions for breaking the rules,
I am
if that makes any
exactly
sense.
the same. I like exactly. It's a very cerebral experience of sex, where like I
Yeah.
think it's very not a lot of people are can do that for you. It takes a really special type of person to do that. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. For me, I almost like keeping it for myself. I it's it I'm kind of like, how do I put it? I've kind of found that for me, like sexual fantasies and having sex are like kind of separate things for me,
yeah,
at least for right now. And part of it might be because like I grew up Catholic, so I have like a lot of just shame around sex and embarrassment or whatever. So it's like thinking about it in my head, I was always able to do that as a kid. Doing it in real life was always like the hard part. And
yeah,
so I think that's there, like I just have a disconnect there that I'm kind of like trying to overcome. But yeah, no, I definitely see where you're coming from with that for sure.
yeah. They're different. They're just. I think the line is just in a different place for different people. But so
Yeah, when you were mentioning you drew like you wrote out contracts and stuff, I was like,
yeah,
dude, that sounds like something I would have done if I had known about it. Like,
yeah.
I
um.
was like, holy shit.
Okay. What did I title this? Just to make sure I stay on topic. What the other fuck I
You're
titled.
good.
Um. I titled it um, "Experiences with Transitioning Gender and Conformity." Okay, okay. Um,
Yeah.
so,
And I know you mentioned you wanted to talk a little bit about some of the girls that you met in art school too.
oh yeah. Um, so yeah, there's definitely a certain type of woman, or not woman, like not woman, explicitly not woman. That it was into art school that was the most popular, most geisha like, and they had a certain push and pull because I feel like they were both hypersexualizing themselves, but also liberating themselves from their gender role where they're hypersexualized. So while also hypersexualizing themselves, like if you were to treat them as if they were, then it would be like you're doing something wrong. So they had that power over you. But I'm talking about like these like white women that were doing like non-binary, or some of them were trans men, but they didn't take hormones or anything, and I think they were just kind of like doing the same thing. But that was I don't know. Okay, look, I'm being very like um
You're good. You're good.
cruel. No, I know I'm good. That's how I feel. I'm being very
Okay.
cruelly judgmental or whatever, but those are the people that I'm jealous of and I wanted to be. And even if I
Yeah.
transitioned, I could never be those people. Um,
Yeah.
because what I would have said back then was I want to transition, but I want to be a trans man, but I don't want to take hormones. That's
Right.
what how do I do that? I just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean. I can't say that I like had the same feeling like with me and like my transitioning experience and all that.
Mhm.
But weirdly enough, I know what you're talking about. Um this was one of the things that I had written down when I was listening to you talk about this in like some of your other videos. Um, I for those like women, if we're talking about the same type of person, because for me, what I always used to see that sounds closest to what you're describing is like the like ethereal kind of like genderless looking beings that like they're clearly female, but like they
Yes.
don't present that way, and they're just kind of like everybody. For me, I think I saw it more on TikTok. It's just like everybody's always like, oh my god, I want to look like you, blah blah blah,
Yeah. I
and it's
was
kind
in
of like, what
school
do
with
they look
them.
like?
I was in school with
God,
them. So that
I'm
was
not gonna
like,
lie. I would have like Robloxed myself if I had gone to art school. I don't know how you did it. Like, it sounds insane. But yeah, like I think I think what I have for those people honestly is resentment. And when I ask myself like why do I feel so resentful? The only answer I can come up with is that whatever they're getting, it feels very unearned.
hmm.
Because it really just feels more like they're cheating the system almost in a way. Um where it's like I guess for me, I can pick up on like vibes, I guess, pretty easily. And I'm very sensitive to when people are being disingenuous, and I have a very hard time believing that these people are going home, looking at themselves in the mirror and feeling like, yeah, this is who I truly am inside. Like it really to me just feels like a front that they're putting on because androgyny and like the mix of androgyny and femininity are so like highly fetishized right now that it's very hard for me to believe that anybody would do that just unironically for themselves, you know?
Yeah, like it's almost like because I would say that women are the like for better and for worse, more for worse than better, women are the de facto sex object, like of like
Mm,
men, and so them being like androgyny being so fetishized, it's almost like you're being hyper women because you're fetishizing yourself even more. You're really
yeah.
filling that role that you're meant to fill.
Yeah, like I've gotten the feeling from like many different people, not just these like this one like specific group, but like I didn't go to art school, but I did do music for a while. I did rap music. And there were people in like some of the communities that I was in that like they gave off that same feeling where it's like and this was something I'd written down. I don't know if this is something you can relate to with your experience, but it's not so much like you want to be them exactly. It's like you want to see yourself the way everyone sees them, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah, like you don't necessarily want like the mystique and everything, but the way you see them when you look at them, you wish everyone saw you that way.
yeah. Also,
If
I
that
had
makes
like a
sense.
lot of experiences, like, or I just like tried to like have friends that were like women, and they would be like very distrustful of me and stuff, and there would be like girls' night only and like that kind of thing added to it. Um, but
Yeah,
that experience I'm just describing, sounds very different from the experience that made you want to transition, where you didn't really. So for me, it was like I was kind of aware of these things, and they all came together, and I was like, oh, this is what I should do. This is obvious. Um, and I've had people
right.
tell me that's like similar to what ContraPoints has said about the reason ContraPoints transitioned. But what you described in the video I just watched, that was very different. You like didn't have like you like had to like admit to yourself that you should or could try it.
Yeah. Um, I definitely had like a different experience than that. For me, it wasn't so much like my peers really had nothing to do with it for the most part. Um, I, I never really felt like a pressure from the outside. It was more like I was running from any pressure I should have put on myself, like internally. Uh, when I don't really know, like, so it's I don't know, it's very hard to explain when you're talking about it in hindsight as gender dysphoria. I feel like sometimes for some people it like just ticks off boxes automatically. It's like, oh yeah, obviously that means you're trans and that means you're trans. But when you're in the middle of it and you don't know what's going on, for you, you're just like you just grow up with a disconnect from your body, and you're just kind of like, how I dress doesn't really matter, how I do my hair doesn't really matter, like how I present myself doesn't really matter. But the effects that not feeling connected to your physical body like have long term are insane. Whereas like, you know, now that I'm like taking hormones and I'm like improving myself and I'm transitioning, I feel like there's so many like small things about myself that I had never like discovered before that now I'm able to like access. It's kind of like uh, um God, I think there was that meme of like, what if you could access 100% of your brain? I feel like I've accessed like 100% of my brain now, and it's like I can be a functioning human being. Um, but like obviously, dysphoria can come from different places, like you said. Like I wouldn't deny that that could be the case. You know.
Hmm.
Don't know if I rambled there, but sorry.
Hmm. Um, yeah. Uh, I have a very different attitude than, or maybe not a different attitude than you, but I want to just tell you the thing that I think we probably disagree about the most. I feel
Mhm.
that, like, listening to you talk about, and in my chat they're saying that the frames aren't doing good. I think it might be because of my multi-streaming. So I turned off my Twitch multi-stream. Okay, it's better now. Okay, I hope that it fixed it. Um,
Okay, cool.
but I believe that having I think if you have something like what you described, where you have some kind of internal sense of gender, which I really don't
Hmm.
have, like at all. All for me, it was
Mm.
all externalized, sort of, and it was autogynephilia, and that was fun, and that's always like that added to, well, I could do this, you know, because I'd like it. Um,
Right.
but I believe that. Okay, just tell me if you think I'm wrong, and then tell me. Okay, so I think in my perfect world,
Hmm.
you feel the way that you do, and you're not being treated the way you want. You're not fitting in the way you want, and I don't think that means there's something wrong with you. I think that that has to do with like everyone around you. Like there needs to be
Mm.
room for you to be like yourself and who you are. Um,
Right.
the hormones themselves and how they affect you is a different conversation, because I know most trans men really have a great experience on the hormones, and that's a different talk. That's a different conversation. But I'm just talking about the gender part. Like you should be able to be like a manly woman and like, you know, not fit any of those boxes, and people like just love you for it. You know?
Yeah. No, I would definitely agree with that. I think this is one of the reasons why it's important to just distinguish transgender from transsexual. Like I definitely resonate more with like transsexual because as far as the societal gender norms thing go, like I don't really care what people do. You know, like I think the more people break out of those norms, like I love to see it. I think it's awesome. Like you know, masculine women and femboys and all of it. Like I think it's really cool to see just the different ways that people can like find to express themselves. I really like unpredictability, and so just seeing how unique people can be is really awesome. The gender dysphoria thing for me is like much more of like a physiological like discontent that you have with your own body, where it's like there is lasting mental effects to not transitioning if you need to, and you'll one way or another. I'm confident that people who need to transition like that, like medically, will find like they'll eventually break out of it if they're like hesitant like I was to like make that move. As far as gender roles socially go, I think you're absolutely right. I think people do need to make space for each other to just like experiment with themselves and with each other to see what works best for them.
Okay. Um, do you think that I don't think that and I'm not 100% confident, okay? But
You're good.
I don't think that if society made room for you, you would want to change your body.
I've heard that before. Um, that's a tough one for me because like I said, I kind of have the insight of somebody who didn't grow up knowing like about like the gender trans stuff, you know. And even before I knew about that, like I would like find ways to avoid showing my body as a female. Um, you can probably make the argument that there were some things that happened um like, you know, not like traumatizing things, but just like things that I learned growing up that might have repulsed me from wanting to show off my body as a female. But um the the intensity of my reaction doesn't match the severity of anything that happened, you know. So if my mom makes a comment here and there, or if, like, you know, one guy looks at me some way as a teenager, that like the appropriate response to that would not be like, for the rest of my life I'm going to hide my body now as a female and never, like, you know, want to change it forever. Like I feel like, you know, if that was the experience I was having, I would have a much milder reaction. Um, and like, I
Well,
just,
that's not necessarily true.
yeah. What makes you say that?
Okay. Okay, I want to tell you another controversial opinion of mine. This
You're
is
good.
much more. No, I know I'm good. I'm my stream. I'm the one fucking making myself
I
look
say
like a
you're good
fool.
for everybody.
Okay,
My
okay,
bad about that.
okay. So I there is an older, like, from the 90s. This was more research, and like they've kind of canceled it. But
Hmm.
there was more research being done on your like sexual development in your I don't know if like I'm not like a scientist, so I don't know exactly where the research is and like how it's progressed, but there is research that people like hate about how your sexual development can impact if you're like straight or gay in like your teenage years. And that doesn't mean that once you're
Hmm.
gay you're gonna like you can like now be straight, like you can fix it, like, but like just the things you see might like make you like develop in such a way. And I think that's way more interesting and seems more human than the theory that we're all just born one or the other. Like it sort of intuitively makes more sense to me, like that,
Hmm.
like you kind of develop into your sexual interests and you know who you're interested in. um and I feel like that makes sense for me. But I think like it could be butterfly theory. Like you could watch like your neighbor mow the lawn, and then that could make you like dramatically reconsider your like gender or place in society, and you're like, why is that? You know, like think about yourself, like, and it could be anything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you like, since you watched my video, I know you'll know what I'm talking about when I said, for me, a big one was seeing how my, like, the friends of my families all had oldest sons, and I was a girl, so I was like the oldest daughter, you know.
Hmm.
And that, like, for whatever reason, that kind of like was one of those things that stuck with me. I can definitely see where you're coming from with that, and I wouldn't like fully deny that that is like the case. I think for sexuality and gender, it's probably a mix of nature and nurture. Like, for example, if like, let's take your analogy of like somebody mowing the lawn and you're watching them as a kid. Like, there might be like 100 kids that they could watch somebody mow the lawn and it doesn't do anything for them, but for some reason it did for you.
Hmm.
And like, if you trace like why that did it for you, like you could probably go back to at least something in your brain that made you more interested, or like that just like lit up for you, you know.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like fully deny that it's like um at least partly nature or something that you're born with, but how those like seeds kind of plant in your brain and like then like continue to develop after you start growing up. Like, I would definitely say there's something to that theory for sure. I guess my question is, if that's the theory we're going with, like, where do you draw the line as to where therapy can help, and where it starts to become a detriment for people who do need to transition?
That's good question, important question. I think that transitioning is a last resort. um
Yeah.
and I feel like that opinion is I'm willing to bite that bullet. I feel like it's just
Mm.
anything is better, and I don't know exactly where that line is. Like in your video, you were talking about how like inconvenient and how much like of a hassle it is. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, that like it's just I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
That's fair.
Uh,
Yeah.
I want people to have what's best for them. I just think it's very likely that people like that if we just stop treating men and women in certain ways and have like such high expectations for each, and we just let people to just truly be themselves. I believe that will like make it better for so many. I mean, like I believe in a world like that, a lot fewer people would want to transition.
I agree. And I think it's really important to first and foremost make space for people to like be able to explore and express themselves. For several reasons. I'm not a huge fan of like the amount of people who are like getting top surgery or getting on hormones. Like I'm not a fan of that at all. It honestly scares me. Because like first of all, you've got medical shortages. That's already happening with Adderall, but there's also just the backlash that can happen is from especially females getting on like masculinizing hormones and getting those surgeries done and then regretting it down the line. It's not just going to hurt trans people, it's going to hurt men too, because like the you already probably like can see this. I was tweeting about it earlier. It's just like that a lot of people can just blame it on trauma responses and like, well, you know, I went through this traumatic experience because of a man, and that's why I, you know, did all this regrettable shit that now I'm coping with because I don't want to take accountability. So I was pressured into it, and it was because of the patriarchy this whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And it just throws like it throws a group of people that's already struggling under the bus even more.
Yeah.
It, so yeah, like for a lot of reasons, I really wish people would think through it like much more seriously before they choose to transition.
The thing that is interesting about the video I just watched, you talking about it, is you kept struggling trying to like do the feminine thing, and you kept trying to do that over and over, and it kept not doing it for you and not working out.
Yeah.
Um,
I definitely tried quite a lot. I I did wear dresses as a kid. Um, Not sure why. My grandmother made them for me. She used to sew all the time, so she'd make a lot of dresses for me, and I just wore them because like they were easy and fun and all that. Um, I'm not against anybody like you know wearing gendered clothing. You know, it's what you do what you want to do, right? Um, I just I can't really say if there's one source for it or not. I just remember at one point I felt safer just not dressing feminine. Um, and when I started to want to dress like feminine or when I would give it a shot, I realized that this might sound weird, but I think I kind of realized that like if I were to start doing this now, I would have to change so much about myself. Mannerisms, the way I stand and walk and stuff. Like, I mean, feminine clothes, a lot of times, like they show more cleavage, they show more like curves and stuff. And I guess maybe there is a social aspect to that because I just I would not want to like change the way I act and stuff just so that like I fit more into like the clothes that I was wearing or whatever. So, or that it would like match more in some way.
mm,
It would be the same kind of way, like if I would think about future careers, like if I was thinking about my future and stuff, I would think like, oh, you know, I could be a software developer, or I could be a musician, or all this stuff, or a comedian. Oh, but I'd be a woman, so it wouldn't make any sense. That would be like the thing that goes through my mind. I don't know why, because like obviously women can do those things, but for me, it always made like nowadays it makes more sense to just think of it as like I'm a man doing these things because like as a woman, I feel like it just wouldn't make any sense. Um, the way I talk and act and all those things like I think it would just like confuse people if I were to try and do those things as a woman. And you can like I can if you're curious, I can show you pictures of myself like before I transitioned. I wasn't like an ugly girl or anything like that, you know, like I could have pulled guys if I wanted to, but the second I started opening my mouth and talking to dudes, even if I could tell they were interested, a lot of them just kind of like switched to like bro attitude because Even back then, like the way I talked and shit, like I think was a huge turnoff for men because I just talked like a guy. I didn't talk like a girl. And it would have been too much effort for me to try and change all of that. I feel like it would have been a long time of me putting on an act when I had kind of like socialized myself naturally to be like a man.
Yeah,
Um, if that makes any sense.
but there should be guy. I mean, I know there are guys that are into girls that are like that though. But like, but one other thing, like something that I thought of, like immediately when you said that story, you said
Mhm.
that you like went very feminine in college or something, and you got a boyfriend who really liked that feminine thing you were doing,
Yeah,
and that was very awful for you because that was something you were like putting on, and then for that to be the central part of your relationship with them, uh, well, yeah, like I think nobody should ever put
yeah.
anything on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so I guess I can go into more detail with that relationship. So it was like my first relationship. I was 19 and I was getting into college and I was starting to kind of like play around with femininity more. I said all that in the video. Um when we started to like get closer and started talking more, he would often make comments like nobody would want you if you look like a guy, like nobody wants a girl that like dresses like a boy or whatever, which now I know is a complete lie. But on top of that, like I was still like Catholic at the time, so I never like fully like went all the way sexually with him. But he would pressure me into doing things that I didn't want to do. And for a very long time, I figured that's where like the dysphoria was coming from. It was just trauma or whatever. But I think what happened now more was like the like some of the traumatic aspects of it were like the fact that I had been able to cover that up for so long, and this guy was just kind of like forcing me to like put it out there for him, and I was not like I wasn't really prepared for what that was going to do because for the longest time, if you're single, like you don't really have to show your body to anybody. It is kind of like admittedly expected in a relationship, which like I was like kind of naive and didn't realize that. But for me, it was just like a weird experience going from like just being able to chill, and suddenly this guy is like pressuring me to be feminine, and on top of that, he was like fetishizing it. Like
Yeah.
it was like if I ever like looked like a guy at all, or dressed at all boyish, like he'd make fun of me for it.
I bet
Ironically, I think
he was probably gay.
I don't know, man. Like he was a fucking weird ass dude. I'm gonna be real. Hey, oh, thank you. Sorry, I'm getting dinner, but I'm still here. Sorry. Thanks, babe. Ah, shit. Um, but like on top of that, he shit. Yeah, so like you were saying you thought he was gay. I don't know, he was weird. He was weird. Like he would buy me clothes I didn't want, like just to make me look more feminine and stuff like that. Um I think he had more mommy issues than anything. And this is something I was gonna say, like sorry if I'm derailing or whatever. But when you were talking about like there's a lot of guys that are into more like tomboyish women or whatever,
Yeah.
that is true. I think a lot of guys are into that more because of the dominance aspect though, and I'm not very dominant as a person. I'm very submissive.
Um,
So like I don't know.
but I think that it's more. I think that might be a correlation, but not a causation. I think a lot of guys are into tomboys because at heart they're truly a feminist and they're sick of the shit that women are sick of, and but also those guys they're probably very honest with themselves and they're more likely to be submissive because
Mm,
like they're not playing into their own masculine role, you know.
yeah,
Um,
that's true. Um, I don't know. You're raising a lot of interesting points, and it gives me something to think about for sure. I don't always have like the clearest
it's
answer
just
right up
it's
front,
just my
but
opinions. I mean, I don't need you
no,
to
you're
change
good.
your opinions either.
No, I'm not. I like
Good.
hearing different opinions. It gives me stuff to think about. Otherwise, I get bored,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it works.
I'm very
Um,
interested in hearing about people's internal experience with gender because I just never have had that. And so what that feels like to and the fact that it people describe it very differently, it interests me on a lot of
yeah.
levels.
Here's something I just thought of that might interest you. When I when I got out of that relationship we were just talking about, and years went by, I was able to heal from a lot of the big stuff or whatever. One of the most lingering, like long lasting feelings, up until after, like, I was even dating my partner now, was like a feeling of emasculation. Um, it was like almost as if like I had been like forcibly feminized as a man in a way that like was against my will, and I didn't like it. You know,
Hmm.
now I'm not against that kind of stuff if it's consensual. Obviously, I like that kind of stuff, but not when it's like forced on me in a relationship, especially my first one. And that feeling like would not go away, and it was one of the first things that actually made me start to wonder what the hell was going on with me, and made me like reconsider my gender and all that, because I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't feel emasculated if I'm like naturally feminine in pretty much every way, you know. But so maybe I did have an internal sense of gender at the time, and I was just suppressing it like big time, and that was it finally coming out. I'm not sure.
I believe that all women are forced feminized.
Hmm,
They're
that's interesting.
I don't think any of the I the my belief my fact is that women's clothes in general are just more sexual. Like, no pockets. The reason there are no pockets on girls' pants is because then you don't have like the baggy shit in there, and then you can have it more form fitting, and it makes your ass and your thighs look better. That's why.
Yeah,
And so like it's to make it more sexual at the expense of function. And I think pretty much all women's clothing is like that, except for maybe like something like, I don't know, if it's just like a grandma thing, it's like a little bit different, but like 95% of like women's clothing is just more sexual. And so I think that men that
yeah.
want to wear women's clothing just want to be sexualized. And I think that women that don't want to wear women's clothing don't want to be sexualized.
That's very valid. I think like I don't think I disagree with that. I for me because a lot of like my sexuality was pretty repressed growing up. I don't think sex really had much to do with it for myself. Um until like probably later on. But I will say, this was something I was about to say, and then I lost my train of thought. I do actually think you might enjoy talking to Shaylin, Max's girlfriend, because she, from what I remember from her interview with Chud Logic, she actually mentioned she had a partner similar to mine who would make fun of her every time she would present like like more masculine or whatever. And I know like Max kind of talked her out of like transitioning and all that. So she might actually be like an interesting like opposite of me to talk to about that stuff.
Interesting.
Um,
Well,
I don't know.
I want
Like
to talk
I
to her
just
about
remember
something else.
thinking,
I want to talk to her about AI art because we disagree dramatically
ooh,
about that.
interesting. Well, I'll definitely watch that because that's cool for sure.
So,
Um,
I think
yeah.
that AI is AI art is removing one of the most important parts of artwork, which is the human behind it. Because when there's a human behind the artwork, you can empathize with them and you can learn from them as a person. You can theorize about why they did it and what about their humanity made them do it. And if it's made by an
Mm,
AI, the best you can do is try to theorize what about the algorithm made it put those things together. Um, and you could pretend it's a human being and try to empathize and theorize about it, but you can never know, and there's no right or wrong answer, and it's just so postmodern, and there's no actual teacher to teach you anything behind it. And
yeah.
she thinks that we should empathize it and like personify it like it's a living thing, and I think it's fucking crazy. So
I don't know. I think like the furthest I've really thought about AI art is that it's going to make a whole lot of like graphic design jobs easier.
yeah,
And that's about it. It's you got me laughing over here because what you just said about like the way you can empathize with the artist. My partner and I were literally just talking about this the other day, and I was
yeah,
saying how much I enjoy looking at like paintings and drawings done by like artists because you can see that thought process. It's exactly the same thing you just said. So I definitely feel you on that point. Is just like there's something to being able to like look at a piece of artwork not just as like a piece of expression, but also as a piece of history, and you get to kind of contextualize it from where the artist was standing and who they were drawing and all that stuff. Like there's so much else, like so much
Yeah.
more to it than just like something nice to look at, you know? So I
Another
definitely agree with you on that.
another thing that that goes into this is something that people kind of assume is bad because of the way the art history has gone, but people assume that it's bad when an artist explains their artwork. No, it's
Mm,
not bad. It's just it's bad when an artist ruins their artwork. And sometimes explaining it ruins it, but the most
true.
valuable thing the human artist can give to their artwork is the fact that they're a human is the intent. And so sometimes
Mm,
explaining your artwork is incredibly powerful. You just can't do
yeah.
it all the time. Like you can't just ruin all your but like when you do it, you got to do it right, and that's what AI art can never do.
No, I agree. I agree. I remember you were talking about this in one of your videos too, and I was nodding my head along because like um sometimes like art can be like a utility thing, right? Like you can use art as a reason to explain something. Like you can create a piece of art and then use it as like a bouncing off point almost to explain something that you were drawing, and it can like spark a discussion or whatever. Sometimes it's also just good to be able to like point things out to people because like I don't know, I think people sometimes kind of they act predictably and they don't always catch like the nuances or like the unexpected things, and sometimes explaining a piece of artwork can help people get a new perspective on something. So like
Right.
yeah, no, I
But the
yeah.
AI can do that. The AI can replicate that and make it point out shit that just chaotically through its fucking algorithm can point out, make you have an epiphany about something that nobody has had an epiphany about before, and you've learned
Yeah.
this from nobody. And but like the thing about that is you're not getting the world filtered through a human to another human. You're getting the world
Yeah.
like it's just, I believe that when, so something that I think is a really bad or dark aspect of our, like, American in particular, but just modern appreciation of art is in like such a hyper capitalist commodification. Like art is a commodity, and we want to tell everybody that they're an artistic genius. Everybody is
Mm.
so like when you if you are an artist and you do like an abstract piece of artwork these days in America, and you put it in like you're hanging it in the gallery, there's a high chance someone's gonna be like, oh, I like it turned this way. Oh, like, because everybody thinks they're a fucking genius.
Damn.
Everybody thinks that,
Yeah.
and we're all given all these simple like baby like level tasks that make us feel like we're geniuses. We have like these like games on our phones and shit. We just feel like we're all fucking artistic geniuses. And if everybody feels like they're an artistic genius, what we end up with is Marvel movies and shit. Like just lowest common
True.
denominator. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God. So true. Um, when I was like in the music world, it's talking about explaining art. There is one man, like he's probably the one who is most likely to make it. But he would, I felt he would make his lyrics intentionally cryptic so that you would need him there to like break it down for you. And in my opinion, if that's what you're doing, you're basically creating abstract art and then like inventing like a reason to explain it to people. It's like an ego boost almost. And when like what you're saying about like things are broken up into like little like bite-sized pieces for everybody to feel smart about, like you don't know, like you could come up with the most clever fucking bar, and like it could be like a double triple entendre, and you could be able to figure that out on your own and nobody would give a shit, but you like put out a bar and then like say, see, it's smart because it's about like this one political movement or whatever, and everybody's like, yo, damn, that's like the most crazy shit I've ever
mhm.
heard. I'm like, what is subversive about saying the same thing like 500 times, like just with different words? I don't know. Like I don't know if that connects to exactly what you're saying, but like I agree that um people feel like too good about themselves for doing like very bare minimum shit. Like if you can like rhyme on a beat and like and it be to the rhythm, people are already like going nuts over how genius you are, you know.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know if that tracks onto what you're saying at all, but yeah, I do feel what you're saying.
Also, it's another factor is I know this is now kind of art talk, so I'll have to add that to the title after. Another factor is fast art makes more money. Like whatever you can do fastest makes more money. Stuff that takes a long time won't make nearly as much money unless you're lucky and you know a lot of rich people that you can sell it for as much as you need to sell it for. But like stuff that's like paint splatter or like is you can see it like progress through art history where like things that are now glorified or appreciated are now more simple and easier to do, sort of.
Mm,
It's not easier to do, just like faster to do. And
yeah.
so it that isn't like that isn't that's because it's just more profitable to do stuff faster. But it has the side effect of breaking everything down into bite-sized pieces where everybody thinks that they can be a genius. You know, like if you splatter your ketchup on your napkin or whatever, and it's like, oh well, like I'm gonna take a picture of that. I'm an artistic genius. I mean, maybe like you're being creative for sure. You are being creative, but like, um, I mean,
Like what's the
the,
point?
you're not doing as much. Like you're making like one or two artistic choices, whereas like in the
Mm,
past, like an artwork involved like countless artistic choices. Like it is like to create the whole thing.
mm. I get what you mean. Looking at a lot of older art, you feel like there's almost a strategy to the expression of their emotion, where it's like you can look at some older pieces and it's like they can make you feel something, but also technically they're very like skilled. Um, versus for me, like even for me, for an example, oh my God, I'm sorry. Like with some of the shit that I draw, it's like, you can tell there's an emotion there, but technically I'm not that skilled. Like a lot of the shit I draw is like not very skillfully done. It's just like you said, it's more fast, but like, I do have intention behind what I'm doing versus I think a lot of like the best artists in my opinion are the ones that get like the technical skill down and they have the emotion there. Like they got both of those pieces. I
I'm
think
not
that's what creates some really amazing art, but
I'm not
I don't know.
discrediting fast. I'm not discrediting fast. I'm just saying, like so
No,
you
yeah.
can have incredible skill with speed, and that is in itself like hard. But it's just that the things that we see like at the top level and stuff, if all those things are fast, then
Mm,
it makes everybody feel like they can do it. And whenever like you accidentally do it, like when like you accidentally splatter paint on something, and then I mean, I guess it would take some kind of an artistic mind to perceive that and to take a picture of it and be like, okay, I did this. But it's just like the original person doing like the paint splatter thing is making so many more choices artistically, and like it was, and you're just kind of also there's I don't value uniqueness. I think uniqueness is overrated, and I think the more we value uniqueness, the less unique we're going to be because we're all going to be doing the same thing.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah. I I think trying to be unique is like counterproductive. You should just try to be you and unique things will come from that.
yeah, there it is. Piece of this goes in the tip of this thing over here. I'm always touching.
Oh shit. I like your shirt by the way. It's just random. I just noticed
Thank
it
you,
though.
thank you.
Oh yeah. No problem. So I guess let me think to take it back to more of the like I guess trans stuff and whatever. Um I'm I personally I think the concept of like autogynephilia is like really interesting. And it's seeing like men who are just like accepting of the fact that like yeah, sometimes they just like to dress as women and what of it. Like I think that's pretty dope. When you talked about like just the creativity that goes into like that part of yourself, is there anything to like the fashion or like how you present yourself? Does the creativity like play into any of that, or is that part more cut and dry, and it's more like the fantasies and stuff like that where you're more
It's
creative?
it's
If you don't
both.
mind me asking.
It's both.
Mm.
Um, so as far as fashion is creativity, there's a lot that goes into this, and this is something I don't hear talked about a lot at all. And now this we're talking about art again, but where
Mm.
but it's fine. Um, so as far as like sexualizing yourself with clothes and stuff, there's like a push and pull between obfuscation, where you're obfuscating certain parts of your body, and illuminating, like super
Mm.
tight fitting clothes. And I'm pretty proud of my body, and I like tight fitting stuff, and like just choosing what to obfuscate and what to be revealing of. And then like accessories are just more layers, like a choker. There's like more sexualizing. It's like a fucking collar, you know what I mean? And so
Mm.
it's, yeah, I think it's objectification, and there's an art to objectification.
Hmm. I can see that. That's for sure. Um, Especially like when you're talking about like illuminating some parts and hiding others, like that definitely makes sense. Um, what is it about like being a woman that you like so much?
Um, Women get to be children.
Yeah.
Yeah,
True. True.
and
Can't deny that.
um, in a sexual context, um, I am sick and tired of, like, if I'm doing an autogynephilic fantasy, I can both, because what I need, if I want to be a submissive, have a submissive role in sex as a man, I need a woman who is going to like treat me like a sex object, and she's gonna get what she wants out of me. And women and treating men like a sex object like that is just so fucking rare, and I think it's just
Yeah,
socialized out of women. And so I'm making myself the sex object, and then it like works better. Um, yeah, I don't know.
that makes sense. It's interesting for me because like at least when you were saying like oh God, fuck you, like I was hearing what you were saying and you said something about like you're like sick and tired of, and I forget what you said right after that, and I was gonna say something about it, but um gee, the interesting thing for me is that like at least like in my experience, because I identify as a guy, like I feel like I'm giving up a lot of those benefits, but it doesn't feel like that to me. You know, like it from your perspective, it must look like I'm giving up like a lot of the benefits that you would want. But for me, I'm like, I don't know. I almost see something like very, very attractive in being a man and like almost like sacrificing the like stronger parts of yourself to another man or to a woman, you know? Like
Yeah,
that act like that act in itself is like it's almost like an act of surrender and like letting somebody take from you even though it might be against like your initial inclinations, not from a consent standpoint, but just like from a manly standpoint. It's not like usually considered okay for a man to like submit in that way, and the fact that you would do that, like that to me is like what I enjoy out of those situations. I don't know if that's like comparable at all, but
yeah, yeah. I'm sick and tired of having to do that sacrifice exclusively,
true. Yeah,
and
gotcha, gotcha.
but also like I think there's something great about that too, and I enjoy that too, in different ways. I mean, even I enjoy a little bit less sexually because I've had it forced on me so much, and
Mm.
but I do enjoy it sometimes. And yeah, there are like you're saying, like, oh, I must see like that you're like sacrificing all the things that I want. No, like there's also bad things about that. Like I'm sure like I'm sure if I was a woman, I would not be happy with being a woman, and and being a man, I'm not
Mm.
happy with being a man. I think that the problem is both like the gen like I everything that sucks about being a woman and everything that sucks about being a man is informed by the other.
Fair
They're a
enough. Yeah.
cycle. It's a cycle. They play into each other.
Yeah. And that's fair enough. Um, I've always kind of seen it as like there's pros and cons to each. Like there's pros and cons to
Yeah.
being a woman, and there's pros and cons to being a man. Like as a man, like you might get more like systemic privileges in certain aspects. You know, you're certainly stronger, so there's that. Um, but like you said, especially in the art fields and like even in other areas, like women like objectively just have an easier time. It almost feels like the thing that kind of determines what you want to do is how much you prioritize like the pros of one and the cons of the other, or whatever. Where it's kind of like what you want needs to align with the pros of whichever gender like you're thinking of, and that's more the direction you might lean. um
Yeah, but
I don't know, but yeah.
my that's I don't like that attitude because I think that then you're I just want to unapologetically do whatever I want, and um if you try hard enough you can find people who are going to treat you the way you need to be treated, and you like I mean you can make your own life like that, and the more people that do that, then the more people that can do that, sort of, you can like set an example. I When I was like a femboy, I got like a lot of attention from women and stuff, but I wasn't like trans or this was like before femboys were like a really mainstream thing. And, like once they started
Mhm.
getting, it's like I don't know when, but I was early 20s and mid 20s a little bit, but I remember joking to one of my friends that um I noticed when I was really femboying it up, I would get like um, glares from trans women,
Wow.
and I was like, you know why? I know I noticed this. It's because I'm what they wish they could be. Because I'm just doing it, and I don't have to I don't have to change my gender. I'm just getting what I want, and
Mm.
they're putting themselves through hell just to get what I'm achieving.
Yeah, you mean from trans women or trans men?
The trans women,
I get, oh wow, okay,
because
okay.
when you're a
Have you
femboy,
even
you're really
sorry.
feminizing yourself and everything, but like I wasn't trans.
Right, right. No, I can see that coming from some trans women for sure. Um, I don't know, like that's a really interesting experience to have, like feminizing yourself like that and getting that reaction. Um,
I might be
I
wrong.
think the
Someone in chat just said that might not be the reason. I don't know. I might be wrong.
hmm. It might, I mean, I guess like maybe for some trans women, I granted, I don't know how they would be able to tell. I wasn't there, but maybe for some, it's more like a, you know, why would you do all of this if you're not actually trans, like kind of thing. It's almost like the turf argument of like you're appropriating our like womanly culture or whatever, but only just directed at cis people instead, or whatever, or I don't know.
Hmm. Being a femboy is a lot of work. Being a trans woman is also a lot of work.
That's
You
true.
said how much of work it is being a trans man. I'm pretty sure it's like way
Yeah,
more work being a trans woman.
it is. It's I don't usually like to put it in these terms because it can be kind of like alienating in a way. This is partly where my pros and cons argument comes from. Is like I think that trans men and trans women both have it like pretty shit in different ways.
Hmm.
But society wise, I think trans women probably get the shorter end of the stick because at least for trans men, like I biggest worry I have from like regular society is like turfs saying that I'm like a lesbian in denial. And then like otherwise I get pretty much ignored versus like you've got trans women getting called groomers and pedophiles all the time and shit. I'm like, being ignored sucks. It doesn't suck that bad. I'd rather that than be called a pedophile just for trying to use the bathroom, you know?
Hmm.
So like in some ways I want to say like I definitely think that like trans men have some privilege there, but it really depends on your perspective on the whole thing. Like it's not easy to say one way or another because like you said, it really depends on like the perspective you're getting or like how everything is from your own perspective.
That's not what I meant. With like
Oh,
how people treat you. I just meant how much work you have to put into your like your body. Like
true.
like being
Yeah.
like, maybe it's easier if you're a trans woman and you're taking like the hormones and shit, but being a fucking femboy and like my hair, like you're taking testosterone, so your hair is growing so much fucking faster and thicker and shit. Yeah, like it's shaving your like legs for me it was like 3 times a fucking week. You know, like that's
Yeah.
sucks. That was the
Shit is a
worst.
pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, okay, when all right, I see where you're saying more now. Yeah, that definitely sucks ass.
Yeah,
Sorry.
like having to put on makeup and shit. Like you don't like the cool thing about being a trans man is like you're kind of liberating yourself from a lot of this bullshit. You know, like
Yeah. I mean, there are some trans guys that like
do
at least
makeup.
from
Yeah,
what I've seen, yeah, you can do makeup. You can also do makeup to make yourself look more masculine. I did that a few times. Honestly, like the reason why I don't wear makeup is just because it's a pain in the ass for me to do.
yeah,
Even when I like lived as a woman, I never really wore makeup that much just
yeah.
because like
Fuck
God,
that.
it's so annoying. And dog, like I rub my eyes and shit was like, and then I look like a raccoon every time. Like it just was not a fun time. I couldn't do it. But no, I mean like femininity is like in general it's a lot of work. Like there's just
Yeah.
so much shit you got to be doing. Um, I don't envy them for sure. Is there any reason you stopped being a femboy, or did you just get like tired of it?
I got sick and tired of it, and I wanted to feel beautiful when I was putting no effort in, and
Fair enough.
that was hard for me. That was a transition. Okay, like I had to
Mm,
learn how to do that, and I've come there. Now I fart on a first date because I think that this is a good test like of like intimacy and like trust or like if you can fart on a first date and like just the person like is that doesn't like they still see like it's a very human thing and you're just being there with each other like it's just like a level of trust and intimacy. I don't know like that I want to
no,
be
yeah, it
I
makes
want to
sense.
be loved at my worst.
Yeah, I
I
mean, if farting is your worst, like you're
well,
doing
yeah,
pretty
oh yeah,
good.
no, I also you get the if oh yeah you should yeah you have the first date with me, oh boy. Oh man, like oh man, I love fighting
You know?
in relationships because it's an opportunity to be truly intimate. Like you're making me mad, I'm making you mad. So I want to know why am I making you mad? I want to understand and you I want you to understand me and I want to understand myself. We can help each other understand like so it's like a process. It's like a
Yeah.
yes. So
No,
that's the special thing about a relationship is you have someone to do that with and to like you know explore yourself with.
exactly. It is like incredible. I was not prepared for like what a relationship would bring. And everything that goes into it. I kind of see where you're coming from with fights. I don't always call every disagreement I go through with my partner like a fight, you know? Like we'll get like heated with each other sometimes or like, we'll get snippy or have an attitude or whatever. But unless we're like both yelling and like slamming doors, I don't really consider it a fight, which never really happens. So I would never say we fight. I just say like we have disagreements and like you said, dude, like it's an opportunity to learn more about each other. And if you
Yeah.
have the communication skills, like it's
Yes.
perfect. Like you're great.
Because you
Yeah.
don't have to communicate on that level normally. Like that's when you
Right.
need the communication skills and that's when you're the most vulnerable and the most intimate. And then after that
That's
you're like truly like looking at each other like wow, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's actually really interesting you say that. Because like one thing I had written down, I don't know if it was like in my notes for you or just like random notes. But I used to think that like sex was as vulnerable and as intimate as it got. Um, and I think like realizing that that's not necessarily the case was like a big like shift in perspective for me. Because Now I'm not quite sure. Like now I'm not quite sure what is the most vulnerable and intimate I could possibly get with somebody. I'm just getting used to like being vulnerable at all, you know, just in general. Um, and so it's like it's weird because that was genuinely where my thought process was like half the time was just like it's got to be sex because you know
Mhm.
I'm more submissive and like that's kind of the only time I really ever am. It's the only time I ever get to be really. So it's got to be like if you're submissive, that must be like vulnerability, right? And no, apparently it goes way deeper. And so I'm trying to figure all that out now.
I think
Just
I
like
think
I'm
it's
learning, you know.
I think it's whatever you're the most ashamed of. Like if you
Mm,
genuinely have like a bag of like your all of your nail fingernail and toenail clippings ever, like a trash bag in your like in your like in closet, like it like you probably
yeah,
be like wouldn't want to show anybody, but like the most if you're that person, you have this like fucking disgusting bag in your closet, this thing that you do, the most intimate thing you could possibly do, vulnerable thing you could possibly do is like look I do this, like I do this. I don't tell anybody, and I'm gonna tell you because I
yeah,
just like and there's yeah, you have to really trust someone, and like I don't know if you had killed someone, and you like you had that secret and like you knew that you could nobody else knew that well then you could never be intimate with someone ever unless you
yeah,
told them that. You could never
yeah,
truly be
yeah.
vulnerable. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. I guess do you think it's like the most do you think then like maybe the most vulnerable thing could be like whatever you're most embarrassed about? Like if you were to narrow it down the emotion, could it be like humiliation and shit? Because like I feel like I feel like a lot of people if they had killed someone and they stored like a garbage bag full of all their toenails in their closet, I feel like the murder would be easier to admit to almost. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
because
I
it
don't
can
know. Just like
snowball. It can snowball. Oh, fuck.
maybe you murdered somebody and then stored their toenails and fingernails in your closet, you know?
Yeah. Well, that'd be a lot smaller of a bag. It'd be a Ziploc.
True.
Yeah.
And just be like, I just have them here, you know, just, you know, forgot to throw them away and they're just there.
Yeah.
But
Um. Yeah. I've on Tinder. When I was using Tinder a lot, um, I would have it set to both like men and women, but that's just
mm,
because for me, like I'm attracted to most pretty much mostly female people, but um I like non-binary types of people and stuff, and I like people that are a little bit more liberated and stuff. And
yeah,
and it's weird that I feel like it's weird that that is so tied to like transitioning and stuff. Like kind of like what you were saying um, about like so many people like getting breasts removed and stuff. But what I was gonna say was that if you're on Tinder and you're like a guy and you're doing that, um, you'll probably hook up with like a lot of trans men that are early on in their transition because of something you said that you're aware of is how like it makes you really horny. And so like there's a lot
yeah,
of early transitioning trans men that are like on Tinder like please someone just
yeah. I mean, if I was single, I'd probably be doing the same thing. I'm not gonna lie. I
yeah.
went through like a like quote unquote hoe phase or whatever before I ever came out as trans, and it was like I think that was more like a self harm thing than anything. But like it you will be surprised at like the matches you can get for sure. I have gone through like a period of just like exploring sexuality in general. I recently deleted the account, but I used to like post to Reddit a lot. And that this is one of those like subjects where like I'll tell you more in person if you want, but like publicly I don't want to get too deep into
Cool.
it.
Cool.
It just it was like it was almost like a little safe space I created for myself, talking about like especially like fantasy worlds and all that that you kind of create. That was definitely like a place for me to explore a lot of that and just kind of like it can depend. Like sometimes you have to get something out of your system and just do it a bunch of times, and you just like kind of like, okay, I don't need this anymore. And other times like it leads you down like a path where you
Yeah.
learn more about yourself the deeper you go, you know.
Yeah.
um and I also had reasons for, eventually deleting it, but uh that was definitely like something I needed. And the tea definitely helped accelerate that because suddenly I had the drive to actually want to explore those things. But nowadays, I almost feel like the horniness has kind of almost evolved, and I'm like looking for other things now on top of that, where it's not just about like getting off now. It's more about like the some of the more intimate aspects of like getting to know people, getting to know like life. And when you were talking about like denial and stuff, like
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of some of the good stuff that can come out of that is just like you learn how to like take it a level deeper than just like getting off physically.
Yeah, something I think I thought about when I was watching your video is like you said immediately like you had like so much energy and you went to like you would like work a bunch of shifts and then go to the gym.
Yeah.
And then you said like, oh, I haven't gone to the gym lately, but that made me think about like just men in general. Probably like that energetic boost from the testosterone is then compensated for with like just like lethargy, or like eventually you learn to like level it out to where you're just as good as if you weren't on it. You know what I mean? you're
No, I agree. I can see that for sure because like it's not like completely gone. I All I can really think about now is like, gee, how did I do it beforehand? Um, and there is a good point to that. Like, it's definitely leveled out a bit more now. I'm still trying to go to the gym like more regularly, just because like I want to actually build muscle and not just gain weight. But like it's just been more of a matter of like personal things that have kept us from going lately. Not so much like lethargy, although more so lately. But like at least in the beginning, it was more just a scheduling thing.
Mhm.
Um, but like that energy was crazy. It felt like the it was comparable to the day I first started taking Adderall for ADHD. It was like that same level of energy. It was like, holy shit, I'm being productive. Like,
Yeah.
um, I don't know if you agree with this or not. But I wonder if like if you look at like depression in men versus depression in women, um, I don't know if there's something to the idea of like treating it differently. Um,
Hmm.
because I feel like women respond more to the feeling of like being loved, like on an emotional level. But at least for me, I've always like gotten more satisfaction out of feeling useful almost. I think even Tuna Chip was kind of talking about this a little bit. Where he's saying like he felt like if you didn't have any usefulness, like you would want to die. I don't really think I'm that extreme in it, but I definitely feel like worst about myself when I'm not being productive or when I feel like I'm not needed by anybody. I don't know if you can like relate to that or if that makes any sense.
No, I absolutely relate to that. It has to do with some of the other things we were saying about like sexuality and stuff like that, I think. But yeah, yeah, usefulness. I don't know if it's different. I think it is. I don't know. There are
Hmm.
differences between men and women on there are differences socially, and there's differences chemically, and then there's differences like brain structure, and those are all like three
Yeah.
different things. And the chemical and brain structure, and even the social, it all mixes together. And
Yeah.
some people don't like to distinguish those things, but I really think it's beneficial to distinguish what is social and what is not social, and it's really hard. Um,
It is. I don't even know if you can begin to do that because like you would almost have to strip away all the social aspects in order to really understand like the
twin
biological
studies,
parts.
twin studies is what I'm told. Studies done
Hmm.
on twins.
Got you. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, it doesn't fully get to what I want to do though, but
Yeah, it's a start at least. Um, I was gonna, I was gonna say something when we were talking about the difference in men and women, and now I'm losing it. Oh yeah, so you said you can relate to like the usefulness thing. Um,
Yeah.
you've you've mentioned a couple times service brain. I don't know what that means. I'm curious.
Okay. Service brain. Uh, the when I'm having sex, if I could just I can be creative as I want doing something by myself. But being with someone, I find that the most fulfilling thing is to do things with them. I want to. I feel that I agree with the philosophy that all sex is a form of masturbation. And I think that the most intimate you can be is when you're truly masturbating with each other. You're truly like if you can make someone feel as good about their own body as they do when they're masturbating, when you're having sex, like I feel like that barrier is hard to cross, and I don't think we usually ever cross that. But um, that in service brain, like so, I'm always in service brain as a man. It's I have to take care of the woman. I have to give myself an orgasm, and I have to masturbate her and give her an orgasm with whatever fucking part of my body. And if I am like doing like it's some AGP or if I'm just being submissive and the woman's like gracious enough to be able to deal with that, then I'm still in service brain, but I'm in service brain in a totally different way. Um,
Hmm.
and even if I'm in charge and dominant, I'm still in a service brain because you're always
Hmm.
thinking about what like if you're in charge, you have to constantly simulating what the other person's experiencing, and that is first and foremost. And then also first you have to act on your own impulses, but only as through the simulation of their mind. Uh,
Hmm.
maybe unless like they're really good at setting boundaries, and then maybe you can just cut loose, which is rare in your early 20s.
Yeah.
I just think so much of sex is service because it's a team effort.
If it's a team effort and and a lot of it is service, is it all on one party to do the servicing? Because if it's both parties, then it seems almost like there's no point in trying to serve each other at all. Like if you're both trying to serve each
I'm
other.
finding myself confused, and that means
Okay,
that I don't know.
fair enough.
I cannot distinguish right now between my perception and what is objective here.
Because
My
the
sexual perception is so I have so many layers upon layers of ogre onion layers to my sexuality and my experiences in sex that I cannot tell you what the fuck you want to know.
you're fine. Um, I guess because if you're both trying to like if it's one person who's doing the service, right? That makes sense because there's a bit of like a dynamic there. If so much of sex is service that it's like service is a big part of it, like for both parties, and both parties are serving each other, then you, in my opinion, like the way I see it, you could just serve yourselves with each other, like using each other, if that makes sense. The
Yeah,
like the focus is more on yourself at that point than the other
sure.
person.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
And so if, yeah, and so if you're both
Sure.
serving each other, you might as well just do it for yourself. Um, which I guess that's an interesting way to look at it. For me, when you said it was something you said earlier, which was like if you can make somebody else feel as good about themselves as when they're masturbating, like that's interesting to me because like I don't really feel any way about myself when I'm doing that. Like I just kind of, you know, disconnect and I like close my eyes, like go into fantasy world, and then you wake up when you're done. Almost, it's like taking a trip to
Right.
Narnia, but
Right.
like
Right. But if I could, if so imagine you had like someone who was like trying to facilitate your trip to Narnia. You could have an even stronger trip to Narnia. Like
I can see that.
theoretically, like that's the dream. That's I don't think it's easy to achieve that, or we ever do, but that is the level of synchronicity of minds and understanding of each other's bodies and boundaries. Like I want to like watch somebody like masturbate so that I know exactly what they do that feels good for them.
That's fair. That's a fair point. Is it ever an issue? Like, have you ever had the problem where it's like you find out exactly what like feels good for them, but then when you try and do it to them, it's still like not the same for them?
Um I've never achieved this magical trip to Narnia with someone. I don't,
Okay, fair enough.
I've tried though.
In
I
my
do a pretty good
uh,
job, but I think, but I mean, it's just not that.
yeah, I feel like part of the fun is that it's like a fantasy. It doesn't always have to be like real life, I think. Um, it's especially for somebody like me where there's already like a bit of a disconnect from your body, like due to dysphoria or whatever. Sometimes like sometimes it's just like not fully possible. It at least like okay, I guess a good example is like once I get top surgery, I'll feel much better about like being touched in certain places, for example, right? So it's like until then, there's certain levels of like that like you know uh, ultimate fantasy that'll just never be achievable. And if you're going into even more impossible territory, like some things you just kind of have to like I think keep as a fantasy and just be like it's okay for it to be a fantasy and I can explore it like as much as I want and it doesn't have to come into real life all the time.
Do you believe you were born in the wrong body?
Um, I'm inclined to say yes. Um, because yeah, I don't really, yeah, I would say so.
I
I can't think of a single benefit I have to being female, but sorry, go ahead.
Sure, yeah, that's true. But like for as far as your perception, like I mean, I can think of some, but you know that. But um, I don't think you, I don't think you can be born in the wrong body. I just think that you can not like I just don't think people are born to be dysphoric. I just don't think that.
I think there's probably something to that. Um, especially if you were to raise kids without like a concept of gender, and they could all just like do whatever they wanted. I feel like they would have a much different relationship with themselves and with each other than whatever the fuck we grew up with. But I I know for me like let's say that it is like a, a massive mixture of like different social elements and different experiences I've had. I don't know if at this point it's worth it to like try and search through all of that to figure out exactly what happened. Um,
Well, that doesn't
I
necessarily, even if you
yeah,
did, it doesn't mean that you would be able to fix it like so easily, you know? So,
yeah. Um, it's not easy to say whether like you were really born in the right or wrong body because you don't really remember like the earliest parts of your life, and you don't really remember like a lot of you growing up. You probably have like some memories and stuff, but you don't remember the day to day thing. And you can't even trust your parents' perception to a certain extent because a lot of parents will only see what they want to see. So if I were to ask my parents, they'd probably say I was really girly growing up, which is true up until I was like maybe 8, and then like shit started to change, and I think they probably just never acknowledged it, you know. Um, I I don't know. I think your line of thought is really interesting. I guess I don't really have the information to like come to a conclusion about what you're giving me. It's more like you're just giving me something to think about with that. Um,
I think that
I
a lot.
remember, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I think
Go
that a
ahead.
lot of the like born in the wrong body type mentality comes from medicalization of this type of thing where you have to like prove certain thresholds and meet certain standard like random like arbitrary standards that they're stupid. Like I think that the reason we say people were born to be gay is sort of the same reason. Like I think it's less realistic, but it enables us to just be like, oh well, you're gay. Like we don't need to think about it anymore now. Like you have this checkbox, you know. And I think it's so
For
much more
sure.
blurry than that.
I agree. That's something I kind of like run into a lot. I tend to like lean to the like transmedicalist side of things where, um, in like in the trans like speak terms, I guess when you're trans med, you're more or less saying like you need to have dysphoria or you should have dysphoria if you want to access medical transitioning.
Hmm.
Which I think is like with everything you've told me about like your views on it and everything. I I think that kind of like backs up that theory a bit because, like you said, it really should be a last resort. And if you have like that level of like distress over your body, I feel like that's probably like a good reason. Um, but like that being said, if hypothetically they come up with like a gender dysphoria test in the future and you're off by like 1.5 points, should you be denied medical care for your dysphoria just because like you were like 1 point off of being too like not dysphoric enough, you know? And I think like sometimes getting a little too strict with that can be dangerous and counterproductive. Because I think about that for myself. Like, what if I was 1.5 points off on a scale like that? Like, I don't know if I could make it if I didn't, have that access to medical transitioning. Um, so it. I think you're onto something by saying like it's much blurrier. Unfortunately, like the scientific fields are so like rooted in empiricism and like scales and numbers and shit. It's really hard to like, I guess what's the word? Compensate the two in a way. Like it's really hard to like balance those things out so that they.
Standardize. You can't standard.
Yeah,
That this is I think just a case of all modern psychology is just they're focusing so much on standardizing everything, and it's just impossible to standardize psychology.
I agree. I feel like I feel like there are ways that you can like classify humans, but it would be on multiple different levels and across like multiple different like traits or whatever. Um, People with similar personality traits are I think a much more interesting way to classify people, and it could be like much more productive than like going by the list of mental disorders they have or whatever.
I think they're the same because if
Hmm.
you have personality disorders, and I think those are even more confusing. Like what a narcissist
Yeah.
was 40 years ago is what an influencer is today. Like
True.
it's just, but the difference
Yeah,
is
that's a good point.
the difference is it's not maladaptive if you're an influencer. So
Right.
what does that mean?
That's fair. I think personality disorders for me are like insanely interesting because I've I have had to deal with a lot of issues with my own self-perception. And it's given me like an interesting appreciation for reality versus delusion. Um, when this was something I actually wanted to mention. You can have like for example, like take a person with a trauma response, right? Like let's say they get hit by a car and they end up hospitalized, but they survive. You might have one group of people that um, gets really terrified of crossing roads now because they're like afraid of getting hit again. But you might have another group of people that comes out of that experience thinking they're completely invincible because they survived like a car crash, you know? They might be like I'm untouchable now, like you can't do anything to me.
Mhm.
And that's still a trauma response, but like the I feel like the thing that determines one versus the other has a lot to do with your own perception of yourself. Where one person saw a near death experience and the other person saw like a like proof that they're
Yeah.
invincible almost,
Yeah.
you know. And it's like for me with borderline, I've noticed that, you know, I got like more or less like treated like shit as a kid by friends and whatever. Like, you know, I was a very much an oddball kid. And that what I drew from that conclusion was, well, nobody wants to hang around with me, so I must be just like fundamentally unlikable as a person. And when you do that, when you come to those kinds of conclusions about yourself, you more or less like almost instinctively act on them, and you can become unlikable as a result because
Mhm.
you kind of accept that as just like who you are. um I think with a lot of narcissists, and this is just my theory, I'm no doctor obviously, I feel like a lot of narcissists, they get treated like shit, but then in their mind those people become like haters, and it's like you hate me because I'm like better than you, like fundamentally, you know.
Hmm.
And that like relationship with your own perception and the environment around you, I think that's what like ultimately determines a lot of like human behavior. That's why even when I look at like streamers and shit and I see the way they interact with the world, and how like they carry themselves as a result of that, um almost coming full circle, similar with like the androgynous girls at your school, or some of the musicians I've hung out with, the way that they act and their environment, or the environment that they put themselves in, seem almost like they seem to like feed off of each other in a way. And that to me is like one of the most fascinating things about human beings, is that like we will come to conclusions about ourselves, and instead of like seeking out the truth, whether those conclusions are real or not, we'll just put ourselves in an environment that matches those conclusions.
Hmm.
um and so like when you're, for me for example, like I was in an environment where I had to be masculine a lot of the time. And so what do? I put myself in more environments where I have to be masculine a lot of the time. And then next thing you know, I'm growing up with only guy friends. And next thing you know, like it kind of like snowballs, but it comes from somewhere. And, you know, wherever that somewhere comes, it's not necessarily always a bad thing. Obviously, I still made the right choice with what I'm doing, but just stuff to think about since you brought up something similar,
Yeah.
something
That's.
related. Yeah.
I guess it can be both good and bad.
Yeah.
Like you can put
Um,
yourself in a bubble where you're completely isolated from helpful feedback that you need, or you could
yeah.
be putting yourself in a place that's healthy for you, where you're treated the way
Yeah.
you should be treated.
Yeah. And I remember like for me, a big breakthrough moment was like some random time I was just sitting in the car, and for whatever reason, I was like shitting on myself mentally. And it was kind of along the lines of like, you know, all my friends are doing really good and I'm here and I'm not doing great at all, like, and I'm still a loser and all my friends aren't. And then like when you kind of like start to ask yourself like, why are you feeling these things, like you come to some interesting conclusions. And for me it was like, the conclusion I basically came to, I can't walk through the process now, but it was basically like, well, for whatever reason, I've assumed that everybody around me must be better than me. And so whatever they're doing, I should probably be doing that too. Doesn't matter who they are around me, because you know, every environment I had put myself in basically treated me in a similar way, and aka inferior. So whoever's superior, whoever knows what they're doing the most, I should probably do what they're doing in order to like make it as well and be successful. But that standard is so flawed because a lot of the people I was around did treat me like garbage. And, you know, thanks to being with my partner, it kind of helps you get a perspective on that when you're around healthy people. And so I was kind of like, wait a second, like my fundamental understanding of how the world works is like broken. And so everything that I'm looking at, it's like practically warped. where it's like I can't even come to the right conclusions about myself because I'm like looking into the mirror, and the mirror is like from a fun house or something, and it's like just showing back like a warped reflection. So it's like you kind of have to almost like um abandon a lot of the fundamental conclusions that you come to about reality, or at least like seriously question and scrutinize them, because what you can find is that like one of the first impressions you ever have as a kid could have like been the like cornerstone for like your entire worldview, you know.
Yeah.
um
Well,
it's the same reason why people have mommy and daddy issues, is because like that's the first man or woman they ever met in their life.
yeah.
I cut you off, my bad.
No, I don't know. I I think it's incredibly important to be very self-critical and self-deconstructive. But sometimes, like, it's all you can also be confident sometimes too.
True.
Um, I think that I have a skill which maybe you could
Mm-hmm.
define as narcissistic, but I'm able to compartmentalize where what types of criticism I want to engage with and what types of criticism I don't. Sometimes I get certain types of feedback and stuff, and I'm just like, I know more than you, and I don't like your feedback. I think it's stupid, and it depends
Right.
who it's coming from and what like they're talking about. And most of the time, I think a lot of feedback is just people saying how they feel without actually giving you actual criticism. They're just like they're putting how they feel as in the form of criticism. And I noticed this since I've been like streaming and stuff. And
Mm.
um, I feel like sometimes I come across as incredibly receptive to criticism, and sometimes I come across as like people are like I'll just get mad and totally shut it down. And that's because I've determined which criticism I want to listen to. Now, I think you could you could define that as narcissism, uh, but I think it's adaptive. I think it's healthy, and I think I know what I'm doing.
I think if people qualify that as narcissistic, they probably have a very like shallow understanding of what narcissism is. Like all the stuff we were just saying about standardizing stuff aside, there is a reason why there are like checklists for certain like symptoms and that kind of thing. Because like if you were to take one or two symptoms of like borderline, like everybody would have borderline, you know. So like I can see why some people might say it's narcissistic, but I personally don't think that's narcissistic at all. I think narcissists are like mostly defined, again, just my opinion, but I think they're mostly defined by like how important they view their role in the world. Um and so like, you know,
You
there's
know
some
what it
people
is.
who like
You
yeah.
know what it is. Oh, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
You're
You
good. You're
can
good. Go
continue.
for
Just if you were okay. I just realized we were talking. It's the type of
it.
feedback that I really respond negatively to is when someone's making an observation that I am critical of myself about. So they're seeing
Mm,
something I'm critical of myself about, and then they just have a retarded conclusion, and I have a way better conclusion about how to improve that specific thing that makes so much more sense with all the knowledge of everything I'm doing and all my options and stuff. I just have so much more of a complex like path forward with this issue, and then someone will be like, this is bad about you, you should like completely change yourself in this way. And it's like, no, I'm like that.
yeah.
You're not telling me how to do what I'm doing better. You're telling me to be Destiny, or you're telling me to be, like be like someone else. Like, no, I see
Yeah.
what you're talking about. Yeah, I like you're not giving me like you're just telling me to stop. You're just telling me to stop doing my being me.
Yeah, yeah. I get the sense you're kind of thinking about the conversation in your Discord a little while ago.
Yeah, a little
It
bit,
was
but no,
yesterday or
but
something.
but that happens a
Yeah.
lot though. That happens like once a week.
Damn, I didn't realize that. that kind of sucks, honestly. But like, good on you for kind of being able to recognize that, because like,
But I respect that
yeah,
person. The person
yeah.
that we're talking about, like I respect that person very deeply. So
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, nothing against them, obviously. Like, I sometimes I don't even know what to do in situations like that where, like, I'm probably guilty of doing shit similarly, like, to other people. We all do shit. I definitely get where you're coming from, though. Like, it sometimes I think sometimes I feel like that a little bit at my job, where it's like I'll get somebody who has no idea what they're doing, like, at my job, and I've been doing it for a few years now, and they like, it's almost like the confidence with how wrong they are that annoys me more than them being wrong. Because if they were just wrong and they were like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I think this is right, like, I wouldn't be so mad. But it's when they're like, no, I know for a fact that I'm doing things right, and, like, then they'll start trying to correct me, and I'm like, bitch, I manage this place. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I've been doing this for 3 years, and you're coming in here, you're like a part timer, and, like, you don't know anything. What are you
mhm.
talking about? And it's like with some people, it's like, I feel like you just kind of want to tell them, like, you don't know who I am at all. Like, why are you giving me, like, certain criticisms on how I should be if you don't
Yeah,
even know anything about it?
yeah. Well,
But
like
yeah,
that's the thing. If it's on like a personal level, if you're telling me like, oh, if you're basically telling me, oh, be like Destiny or something, then and I've thought about the thing that you're criticizing me about deeply, and my solution isn't to be more like Destiny. My solution is to be more me, but better. Then for me to respond to that and make that clear to you means I have to now justify myself on a very
true.
personal
Yeah.
and intimate level that feels totally inappropriate and heart wrenching, especially if it's done in public. And it's like, no, I'm not
Yeah.
fucking doing that. I'm not gonna explain like all the decisions I make about how to present myself. You know what I mean? Like these very personal, like that. No, like no. I
No,
yeah.
I get that. I feel like I'm like mind reading here a little bit, but I feel like I wonder if that's something that you might appreciate about Mr. Girl then, because I feel like he doesn't really justify himself very much either.
Right, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the reason that I started streaming was because he is doing something different with streaming, and I was like, oh shit, like so I can streaming seems like honestly streaming seems pretty easy, and it's like a way I can like be making art and stuff, and I can be promoting other art, but like I don't have to do the thing where you just sit in front of a computer and play a video game and then like read the chat and like make have like a system set up so that it makes fart noises every time someone like types a fucking the right and like like shit like that, and it's like
Yeah.
I don't have to do that. I can have like conversations like this, and like I can, you can do whatever you want. I could do some more interesting performative things. Yeah,
You can take it deeper. I get what you mean.
like a TV show.
Um,
I could make it a TV show. I could.
yeah. I saw you talking about that. Like, do you want to, like, expand on that? Like, what do you mean by
No,
TV show? Is it
I
like
don't know what I
fictional
mean.
or?
I don't know what I mean.
Okay, fair
I
enough. Fair
just
enough.
mean something that's not just sitting in front of a computer like making fart noises. I mean like something prepared, something uh like Mr. Girl has amazing setup where he has this fucking call-in show. Easy,
Yeah.
consistent. I'm not big enough to have a call-in show, I don't think. Maybe I would be. I don't know. But he's just got this consistent thing to always rely on, and then he has his inconsistent things in the middle, like a couple of days a week.
Mm.
And I need a consistent thing. Anyway,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I actually feel you on that. I've like had the same thoughts for myself. It's just like, gee, how do I do something consistent? Like, you kind of need to find a formula or something. But yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, do you have any other things to talk about? Because we're seems like we're winding down quite a bit.
I'm trying to think. I can't really think of a whole lot else. Was there anything else you had?
Nope.
Okie
I
dokie.
have. You are on. Where am I clicking here? You are on YouTube as
Sorry.
I have your link to your Twitter and your YouTube in my description, and
Cool.
I'm just gonna shout it out real quick.
Oh, thank you.
You're on YouTube as
I think my YouTube is still at my old name.
I have
It should be like P Bottom Politics or something.
yeah, P Bottom Politics. You just restarted. You got
Yeah.
two videos up.
Yep.
And your Twitter is Bunny Ollie.
Yep.
And those are both in
But
the
with a
description.
0 instead of an O.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for talking. I'm not gonna lie, I've been excited about this like all weekend, so I'm really glad we got a chance to talk. And
Cool.
if you have any other questions or you want to like talk like one-on-one about other stuff, just let me know.
Cool.
Yep.
Keep up the artwork. Don't stop.
Thank you. I won't. And same to you.
Do it until you truly hate yourself because you hate artists. You know, like.
I've already started to hate myself.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm getting there.
You're getting there. Yeah.
Alrighty.
All right. See ya.
Hell yeah.
Bye.
I'll see.
All right. There you have it. I don't have another streams planned right now, but I have a lot of things on the coals and in the works. So stay tuned, stay vigilant, and always be ready for another dose of smethadone. This is your Smethton speaking. See you later, Smeth heads.